So I've been wanting to get a small form factor, low-powered PC for some time now. Don't really need it, but my gaming rig, which is also my primary computer, does draw quite a lot of power. So I wanted something more efficient. And you can see this one has already been opened, but it was half price at my local shop here. Oh, quite a big retailer here in my country. So I couldn't really resist. Had no really knowledge of Lenovo's small form factor PCs. The ones I've looked at was from Asus or Intel. So yeah, half price and comes with 16 gigabytes of memory and a i5 10 series 400T 2 gigahertz, and also have Windows 10 built in and a 512 gigabyte SSD. So definitely pretty beefy components. And this one is manufactured in 2020 as of the December or November, 2020. So a fairly recent build, but as you can see, it has been opened, so I'm not really sure if this is just a store display unit or if it's somebody have already bought this and returned it. I wasn't really able to look inside the box before I paid for the item, so yeah, let's just have a look at how the condition actually is. But you can see here, definitely the power supply has already been opened. Comes with this 90 watt power supply, and this is one great thing buying a Lenovo computer, because these power supplies are used both on their laptops and the small form factor PCs and so on. Very easy to get a new one and replace it. Like I said, a 90 watt power brick, which is definitely more than sufficient for what this computer needs. It is a very power efficient little machine here. But you can see the guy who actually repacked this one didn't really pack it all that nicely, at least according to this plug here or the cable. There is a little Velcro there, so it could definitely be tied a little bit better together. Not the best first impression, but definitely fine enough. And the two power cables there seem to have not been used at all. We do have a 3-prong connector there and also a standard European connector with just the 2-prong there. And the other end, of course, we do have that 3 connector, which is pretty standard for these types of power supplies there for laptop computers and small form factor PCs like this one here. So yeah, definitely nice. Never been used, those cables there. And of course, we do have some writing included in the box here. So Ideacentre Mini 5i, not i5. A little bit strange because it does have an i5 CPU inside. But yeah, it's called the 5i. And it's a small 1 liter PC. And yeah, you get some quick start instructions here and some warranty information as well. I believe you do get only 2 years of warranty with this one here. Some Lenovo computers you do get 3-year warranty, but yeah, this is a lower end consumer grade computer. So yeah, 2-year warranty is what you get. So let's have a look at the computer itself. This is definitely the most important part, and first impression actually quite good. There still is, protective on the little Lenovo logo there that haven't been removed yet. And looking around the device, it actually looks close to brand new. Definitely very nice to see that. Always a little bit like scary looking at or buying stuff that has already been opened, but you're not allowed to look inside. It is all plastic construction, and on the backside here we do have ample amount of ports. So you have a 1 gigabit LAN connector. This is an Intel LAN. We have 5 gigabits USB Type A. We have a HDMI 1.4. And we also have DisplayPort 1.2, and of course that power plug there that we have seen with so many Lenovo computers. And it's, like I said, very easy to get a new power supply should this fail at some point. And we also have some ventilation holes there for, of course, the CPU or the APU rather, because it does also have a built-in graphics, only Intel HD 630 graphics, but definitely fine for the type of work that I am going to use with this one here. Rubber feet there, you can see they have definitely been on some kind of a surface before, but overall I am more than happy with actually the overall condition. We do also have some holes there in the bottom just for the little fan inside to draw in some fresh air. And the right side here, there is nothing really. The left side and the front side, we do have a power button, of course. We also have USB Type-C and USB Type-A and a multi-port there for both headphones and microphones. All the plug on this device here is USB only, so there is no Thunderbolt in that USB Type-C plug on the front, which is a little unfortunate, and only 5 gigabits per USB speed on all the plugs there. But anyways, we can just remove the top cover there. It is like pretty easy to get inside this little machine. There is 3 screws. You can see here, if you just want to remove this little steel plate to get inside and actually change or mess around with the RAM and or SSD. So it's fairly easy to get in there. Not something you will do every day, of course, but definitely just 3 screws I think is easy enough. So let's just remove those and see what we actually get included here. Should have 16 gigabytes of memory and 512 gigabytes of SSD. Let's just remove that little metal protector there. And you can see inside we do have a very small form factor SSD. It's a 42 millimeter SSD, so for some reason I'm not really sure why they will include such a small one when there's room for a full 80 millimeter SSD in there. Maybe you just can get these a lot cheaper and yeah, just throw them in a cheap machine. Makes a lot of sense, but yeah, definitely have a room for a much bigger SSD. And also only one DIMM here. That's also a little bit strange that companies are doing this, because you will look at kind of a degraded performance compared to like a dual channel memory. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I do have other memory sticks lying around. So I'm going to install these ones here that actually came from a Lenovo gaming laptop, the Legion 5 Pro. These are also 16 gigabytes, but spread over to 8 gigabytes of DIMM sticks. So I'm definitely going to use those in this machine here just to get dual channel, and 16 gigabytes of memory is sufficient for the kind of stuff that I plan to use with this one for, which is pretty much just office work for work. So yeah, emailing and internet and so on. And yeah, this little cover can only really turn one way. So we just put it on back the same direction there and just squeeze it in place. So yeah, definitely overall first impression, nice condition. Let's just try and actually plug it in here and see if it actually works, and if you can see how much this actually been turned on. If it's a display unit, there is a chance that this one have been on for like more than a year non-stop. But for half price, I could definitely live with that. But I also am a little bit curious to see if they actually have reset everything, and yeah, if it's ready to go. I'm not really sure how great this company I bought this from, but the reseller I bought this from, is actually at restoring everything on the device. But anyways, let's just press the power button there and see how far we can get, and definitely screw this little metal plate in place if you want to mess around with it a little bit later. I didn't want to assemble it completely because I do have a plan to totally disassemble this computer here. You can hear the little fan there kick in. Definitely is audible, a little louder than I would actually have liked, but you can actually also go into the BIOS and set it to be a little more quiet. So I definitely recommend you go ahead and do that if you, like me, don't really like big fan noise or a lot of fan noise. But I definitely noticed during the setup process, just setting up Windows 10 Home here, so it seemed like the reseller have actually gonna go ahead and reset this computer, so it's completely set back to the default configuration. But setting up Windows 10 just took forever for some reason, and it will just continue. And you can see here setting up did feel very slow, so I was a little concerned at this point, to be honest. Maybe there was something wrong with this machine, maybe not. Not really sure at this stage here, but it definitely just took forever to just get into Windows, just going through the initial setup process. I've sped up this process quite significantly, and still, it takes a long time. And when we finally put it into Windows, we can have a look at its specifications here, and it's definitely correct specifications. You see on the box there, 16 gigabytes of memory, i5-10400T CPU, which is a 25 watt CPU, quite a beefy little CPU of such a small form factor PC. And if you have a look at the Lenovo Vantage software, you can see the warranty have already been activated as of late April 2021. So I guess that's where the store would actually have set this machine up for display. And it will end in April of 2023. So I'm kind of losing a year of warranty, as I bought this here in February 2022. You can also see the storage there. We have almost 500 gigabytes of total storage. So yeah, definitely the little SSD there also holds up in terms of the specifications on the box. So I believe it's exactly the same hardware as should be sold with this machine here. So I'm a little less concerned that somebody had actually messed around with this machine here. And in terms of speed, this little SSD, not really the most impressive, but I don't think that's the reason why it took so long to actually start up in Windows or set Windows up. I believe it's the lack of dual channel memory, which will definitely hinder the system's performance quite a bit. So yeah, that's definitely the first thing I plan to do with this one here. Let's just go ahead and upgrade those memory sticks there, so we can occupy both the DIMM slots and run in dual channel. So also I want to get into this machine here and have a closer look at all of its components on the inside there. You only really need to remove 4 screws. I learned later, but I ended up removing all 8 screws there, but only the recessed 4 screws to get into the bottom section here. And you can see there's also room for a 2.5-inch hard drive, or SSD for that matter. So that's quite a nice little upgrade there. I didn't really expect that. And you can also see all the hardware to actually mount it and also to connect it to the motherboard is there. You also have a little fan. Not really that much dust on the fan, so I don't suspect this machine have actually been on for that long. Maybe, yeah, a few months, if that can really be that long. But definitely, this is not a machine that's been on non-stop for a year, at least not what I would consider in terms of the minimum amount of dust that's on that fan there. But other than that, it's pretty easy to get inside this little machine here. And the bottom plate there also looks like almost brand new. Not really much dust or anything like that. Anyways, let's get into this machine here. We can see the little back plate there. You can remove it. Much easier to disassemble it if you actually remove the little back plate. And let's have a look at the hard drive caddy there. Nice little design. You only really need to pull it from the one side there, you can see, and you can remove the whole hard drive caddy. You don't need to use any tool or anything like that, and you also complete toolless installation if you want to install a hard disk drive into this little machine here, which is definitely something I plan to do in this setup here. Once I'm inside, why not just replace or install a hard drive? And also you can see the whole fan assembly, very easy to disassemble. There is 2 arrows there on the side. You can just squeeze in the little plastic tab and you can just remove the whole fan assembly, which is definitely a nice added little bonus there, because it makes it much easier to actually clean this fan assembly. But also, if you want to replace it in the future, if it starts making a lot of noise, you should be able to actually go out and buy a new fan assembly and just plug it in. Don't really need to remove any screws or anything like that. Not really as easy to get back into place, but you just need to line it up correctly there, squeeze it in, and make sure that those 2 plastic tabs there are firmly connected. And of course, always remember to mount it back onto the motherboard. So yeah, the fan will of course spin up. I have a lot of these 2.5-inch hard drives lying around with these hard drive caddies that I don't really use. Some of them I've used with previous Xbox and PlayStations and so on, but they have just been in my drawer for for ages. But anyways, I have this 2 terabyte one here. I used it for time machine backup once a long time ago on my Mac. I believe it was my iMac, so I haven't really been used all that much, and it's, like I said, just been laying in my drawer. So let's just take that apart and actually install this 2 terabyte hard disk drive inside the case. I'm not really sure I will ever use it, but once we are here, and since I have this lying around, let's just install it. It comes wrapped in all of this tin foil there, just to protect it a little bit from that plastic caddy. And let's just remove the little plug there from the motherboard. So I really like the fact that it also comes with the SATA plug and everything to just hook it up. Sometimes these machines here from Lenovo or other manufacturers, if they are not sold with a hard drive, sometimes they're just not included with the plugs, and they can be quite hard to actually go and get. So very easy installation, of course. Just plug it in place, and that's pretty much it. You don't really need any tools or anything to assemble it to this into this little plastic tray. I did try and remove the rubber stoppers. I thought maybe you need to remove those and put them into the drive before actually assemble them into this little plastic caddy. But I ended up actually finding this was not really a necessary step, and I don't think the Lenovo designed it that way. So, but you can definitely remove these, and you can see they have a little rubber gasket there, so it will also be a little anti-vibration or little vibration dampening. You should hold on to your little plastic caddy there. Did fly out of my hand. You can see here, try to just plug them into one of the sides here of the hard drive. And I thought actually you'll need to squeeze it into the side, but yeah, you can't really mount it like this. So don't recommend do that. Just leave all of those little attachment point inside of the little caddy, and you can just bend it in place, as I will show you once I find out that this is not the correct way of doing that. But you can see the two holes there actually opens at the opposite side, so you can't really do it that way at all. So yeah, anyways, now I have put the little rubber stoppers back in their correct placement and just align them on the one or the other side. And you can see here, just squeeze the plastic frame into the hard drive on the side there, so it will align with the little hard drive hole. You have to use a little more force than what is actually comfortable using, at least when for me, a brand new computer there. But after a few times I succeeded, and the hard drive is mounted properly now. And you can see here, once I tried, I believe this is my third or fourth attempt or whatever, I guess you just squeeze them in place. You have to squeeze them on both sides there at the same time, and once done so, it will just be mounted like so. Here you can see all the little prongs there are inside the hard drives and nicely vibration dampened as well. So yeah, definitely took a little longer than I had anticipated, but definitely just squeeze in the hard drive and flex the plastic frame a little bit, so you can make the screws inside put the screws inside the hole of the hard drive. And then of course, make sure you put the hard drive caddy back in place, and it has to make a little click, so it is clicked well into place. So that's pretty much it in terms of hard drive, and I just wanted to look at the CPU fan first off. A little bit later we will also try and remove the CPU fan and replace the thermal compound. That's also one indication if this computer has been on for a long time. Maybe that's dried out. And for now I have just assembled everything again. Let's just install the Fury memory sticks there. Oh, excuse me, it's not a Fury memory sticks. Those are in my Lenovo laptop, but this came from my Lenovo laptop, and it's also Kingston memory, and I believe it's exactly the same spec as the one that was inside the computer here when I bought it. Of course, just half capacity, but 16 in total, which is, like I said, more than enough for this kind of stuff that I want to do with this machine here, which is just email and browse the web and everything of that nature, so normal desk applications. Let's try and turn it on again and see if this time it is registered, or the memory is correctly registered. And let's go into the settings here of my Windows computer, and you can see here under settings they are set to 2666 megahertz, which is the fastest this CPU can accommodate, because this is an Intel 10th generation. And you can see here all of the specifications. So the memory is registered just like they should. And I also did run a mem test. I always do that when I get new or used memories inside of my machine, and everything works just fine. And they run at cache latency 90/90/90/43, which is not that impressive, but again, fine enough for a machine of this class here. And like I said, I did also run mem test. I always do that with a new machine, even though I've already run mem test with these memories on my other machine. I just wanted to make sure that they are also compatible and working reliably with a new machine. So did I get a pass here after 4 tests there of 4 passes there with mem test. I do have a Samsung NVMe SSD inside this case here. You can see a 970 Evo. I don't really use this at all, so I thought maybe I'll just plug this one in, because it is a significant faster, and it's actually quite bottlenecked by the 10 gigabit USB speed that you can get with this kind of case. So let's just utilize this. I have not really used it that much. I believe I have around 3 terabyte writes to that disk. And then we can put the small mini form factor 42mm inside the USB caddy. I think that will make, or it will fit much better in there, because it is not the fastest SSD. And then I can also get into Samsung Magician and of course update the firmware of the other drive from Samsung. This is also a Samsung drive, but of course this is not a consumer drive or a drive you can just go out and buy. This is like one of those OEM drives, and you can see here fits just well into that little USB caddy that I have here, and I think this will make a much better fit for USB 10 gigabit per second interface. So yeah, that's quite nice. Let's screw it in place, and it is ready to use. And I've also just backed up at the same time. Everything was on that drive from this machine here. But anyways, let's just remove the little plastic tab. But definitely do not do it like I do here. This is not the right way of doing this. You need to disassemble the machine. On the back side of the motherboard, you can kind of squeeze the little plastic ends together. I found out later, but since I've already just screw everything back in place, I just didn't want to do it like that. So you can use a little bit of force and actually squeeze it out the front here, which is also okay, but like I said, don't really recommend it. You could accidentally end up breaking that little plastic tab, and that is quite an expensive actually little plastic tab if you want to get it second hand. Anyways, plug in the 970 Evo here. The same capacity, 512 gigabytes as well, but it is significantly faster than the other drive, so I feel like this is a better fit for this type of computer here, and this is going to be my primary little machine. You can see there's also room for another NVMe SSD, or would have been room for another NVMe SSD on the motherboard, but unfortunately the little socket there is not attached to the motherboard, so I cannot put two NVMe SSD in there. Second up here, or second time disassembling the computer, I just wanted to kind of see how dry the thermal compound was this time around here, just to get some kind of indication if I needed replacing, and also to see if actually some kind of indication of how long this machine have actually been turned on. There's 3 screws holding the little thermal compound, or excuse me, thermal brick there in place. And you can see there is definitely a lot of thermal compound there on that heat spreader. But you can see it definitely is fine enough. It is not dry at all. It is still pretty flexible. So don't need to do this at all. I don't really recommend it if you find one of these. Maybe if you find one in a few years in the future, 2024, I would recommend changing thermal compound. But you can see the little CPU there as well. And also it's a socketed CPU. So I could, in theory, upgrade this one to the i7 version. Maybe I'll do that in the future, but for now the little i5 have actually held up quite well. But it surprised me a little bit that this was also a socketed CPU. We don't see that more in small form factor PCs and laptops and so on. So yeah, could be replaced in the future also if something would happen to this one here. And you can see the little blue plastic tab that I talked about before for the NVMe SSD. Just go into the backside of the motherboard and squeeze those two ends together there, and you can remove it much easier than to just force pry it through the front of the case. Mine also have a AX Wi-Fi card, which is kind of nice. So Wi-Fi 6. I've seen a lot of these machines only have Wi-Fi AC. So definitely kind of nice little upgrade there. And yeah, let's just spread some new thermal compound on there, screw it in place. And very easy upgrade. Also, if I in the future needed to change the thermal compound and of course remove some dust and so on from the little fan assembly there. So fairly easy to get in. Like I said, you don't need to remove all 8 screws like I do here. Only really need to remove 4 screws, those recessed screws inside the little case here to actually get into the machine. And last thing to do is to squeeze the little fabric on top of the case. I'm not really too keen on that design, but anyways, let's just clean it off with some isopropyl alcohol so we can get every kind of fingerprint and gunk and everything out of the way. And let's just turn it on here and connect a watt meter. You can see around 1.2 watt just in standby, not turned on. Let's just turn it on and see how much power we can actually get this little machine here to draw. In my experience, it's around the 20 watt, maybe 15 to 25 watt, just browsing the web, emailing and so on. So definitely a lot more efficient than my gaming PC, which is around 120 to 200 watt, just doing the same things. And that is with 2 monitors connected. But you can see here it can go a little higher than that as well. But I think if I will use this as my primary computer for everyday tasks, I could saved quite a few dollars on my electrical bill, which has just gone up and up throughout the years. And you can see the temperature there just idling around 33 degrees on the CPU, which is definitely fine. Fan is around 1600 RPM. But if you go into the BIOS, you can set it to quiet profile and it will actually go down to, I believe, 1200 RPM. Makes it almost not noticeable in terms of its loudness. But anyways, let's just try and actually squeeze out a lot of power of this machine here. So now I'm running a CPU and GPU benchmark, which is kind of maxing out both of them at the same time. You can see we are getting up to around the 60 wattage when you are maxing out both CPU and GPU. This is of course the little built-in GPU there. And definitely not too bad, I believe. 60 watt is a lot more efficient than my current 12-core gaming PC. So yeah, definitely I'm happy with that. And for me personally, I don't think I would ever end up using this machine to its full potential. Yeah, like I said, for me, I hover around the 15 to 25 watt for the kind of stuff that I do. So this is a little more extreme scenario in terms of my personal usage. But of course, your mileage may vary. But like I said, I do suspect to save a few dollars on my electrical bill if I end up using this machine as my primary day-to-day computer instead of, turning on my RTX 3080 there, gaming rig. And you can see the CPU there, when we do max it out, it ended up going up to 66 degrees Celsius. It did peak at 67 degrees Celsius, but I believe this is definitely more than fine. I believe it's 105 watt CPU maximum temperature. So it's pretty far from that. And you can see Cinebench R13, we scored 6,143 points, which I think is definitely a nice little score there for a 25 watt CPU, 10 generation, 6 core, 6 thread CPU. And the Samsung Evo 970 Evo Plus drive, you can see it is a lot faster than the drive that came included. So we're looking at 3,500 megabytes per second read and 3,200 megabytes per second write. So I believe this is a substantial upgrade coming from the little built-in SSD, which is fast enough. And the SSD that came with this machine here in the USB enclosure, you can see we are getting around 460 megabytes per second read and 550 megabytes per second write. And this is, of course, USB 3.0 or 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabits per second speed, which is definitely fine enough, in my opinion. We also have an Intel NIC inside here. It is a 1 gigabit NIC. Would have been nice to see a 2.5 gigabit NIC, but maybe a little much to demand of a machine at this price range here. But we have seen it in other small form factor computers, and you can see here we get close to 1 gigabit per second internet speed, which is what I have here in my house. We have a 1 gigabit connection and I'm getting like 940 up and down, which is fine, again, in my opinion. We also have a Wi-Fi 6 card in here, so Wi-Fi AX201, 160 megahertz Intel Wi-Fi card, which is definitely also a nice upgrade. I've seen a lot of these machines come with Wi-Fi AC. And you can see around 600 megabytes per second download and almost close to 800 megabits per second upload, which is again a lot of bandwidth there from a Wi-Fi connected card. I do have a Wi-Fi 6 router though to take advantage of that card there. And connected to my ultrawide monitor, you can see I can only really squeeze out 50 Hertz over HDMI. Like I said, it's only HDMI 1.4. So if you're running anything about quarter HD resolution, this is a little bit higher than quarter HD resolution, you can only really squeeze out 50 Hertz of this monitor, which is a little unfortunate. So yeah, 4K over HDMI is no go. You can of course do it with the DisplayPort 2.0 if you want to achieve 60 Hertz or more. And inside the BIOS here on the power, you can set it to best experience if you want to just have the fans run at the lowest possible speed. This definitely does help out a little bit on the noise. It's not a loud machine, but you can kind of hear a little hum in the background. And this machine here is, at least in my setup, something I plan to use pretty close by. So yeah, go into the BIOS and set it to the best experience, and the fans will spin down to around the 1200 RPM. Just make it a little bit less audible. And also did go in here and update the firmware always recommend updating the firmware. It will improve some features or improve some instabilities and so on, and safety, and yeah, definitely go ahead and do that. And it does take quite some time to actually install. And I also tried Ubuntu on this little machine here. Everything works fine. I don't believe anything wasn't installed properly, so you could get your internet card to work, and Wi-Fi card works just fine, Bluetooth, so on and so on. So definitely, if you want to run a Ubuntu or other Linux distro, then this little machine here is definitely also a fine alternative. So as you can see here, everything is registered just fine. So yeah, fine for Linux as well. But I plan to use it on Windows, so just wanted to try and see how much or how well it will actually run on the Ubuntu there. But anyways, just to sum it up, I really like this little machine here. Kind of took a chance because, like I said, it has already been opened. The store guy working in the store didn't really want me to open it before I paid for it. For some reason, that made me a little more nervous. But it is a pretty big retailer here in my country. But if you open the items you buy there, you do not have any kind of return policy, which is a little unfortunate. If you don't open it, you have unlimited return policy, but you kind of have to open a machine like this, especially if you buy it used, to see its condition. But luckily, no issues, no damage or anything like that. There was slight marks on the feed, and of course the power or the charging cable there wasn't really tucked in all that nicely, but other than that, I am definitely more than happy with this machine, and especially since I got it 50% off. That is just insane for this kind of hardware, and I've been using it every day since I got it. I've had no issues at all. In the beginning, I did hear the fan a little bit in the background, even with the lower RPM setting inside the BIOS, but now I don't really hear it at all, and it's not really an annoying sound at all. So I really like it. I'm happy with my purchase, and I plan to use it as my primary everyday computer. For anything other than gaming and editing videos, I will just be on this little machine here going into the foreseeable future. So if you can find one of these machines here for a good price, I definitely recommend you go ahead and get one, especially because it's maybe not the most common computer or one of the more popular alternatives out there. The Intel NUCs, or I've also seen a lot of Asus computers, these small form factor PCs, probably a little more recognized than this Lenovo here. So I haven't seen a lot of them out in the field, but they're definitely available. And like I said, you can probably get them pretty inexpensively because it's not really a machine that is that common. And yeah, for instance, here in the place where I bought them, they just sold them out because I not really sure that Lenovo actually makes these anymore. So if you can find it at a steal, go ahead and get one. If you need a small form factor computer, I definitely highly recommend it. Had no issues here using it for a few months now. But that's pretty much it for this video. I hope to see you again in a future one. Until then, take care.